Okay, cool. And I just started recording, so we can go ahead and get started. Chen, you got the first one?
Yeah, so I believe everybody got a chance to look at the MR and got feedbacks there. I'm going to consolidate. And right now, there are open questions here. Is the first response time? I'm not sure what is reasonable here, so I need opinions to make there. And also, other main concerns here, I listed code out there. Expertise that caused a few folks are concerned that we don't have if the on-call engineer doesn't have expertise, his morale and the result is not what we expect. So that's one thing we need to think about. Maybe need to develop another alternative plan. And the licensing cost, it may not be a real issue. I'm still working with Anthony to find out more. Looks like there will be a bot to handle it. And yeah, the next one is the first response time. I'm not quite sure. So I need help to make decisions.
Yeah. On the first one, so you're suggesting that the response time is based on the severity of the issue?
Yeah, the severity, yeah. And Anthony's feedback is from the infrastructure team that once they escalate from the infrastructure team, they want immediate attention.
Yeah, it feels like response time, ideal response SLO is 15 minutes. And the assumption is that it's an operational issue. Right. So I think that's the key aspect is that, if it's not an operational issue, I wouldn't expect it to be a SEV2 that's an operational issue doesn't even, I'm not even sure the SEV 1, 2, 3 applies as much as you have an operational issue. And in theory, it would be a SEV 1, at least in my mind, from that perspective, at least initially. That's kind of my thoughts around that initial part of it.
Okay. So regardless of the severity level, S1, 2, 3, they're equal.
Yeah, I think so. And then the expectation is that, it is the expectation, we should probably write it as such that the expectation is it's an operational issue.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll add that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The other thing you can do is we got the management board, right? So any issue that's non-operational can be managed through the prioritization of the infrastructure dev board.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Touch that.
All right. And then
next one is the expertise. So many people had concerns that the on-duty engineer doesn't have the expertise. They have to ping others. So this will hit that engineer's morale. I mean, there's the first response engineer's morale, and also it delays the response time because we don't have the expertise. So I was thinking what the best way on top of my head is probably change the way we do the on-call. Have every team, every domain nominate several experts there and rotate among those experts.
Deli and Tim, you got an opinion on this? This is the one I've been wrestling with the most is do we have one rotation and then the person's responsible for bouncing around, or do we have a rotation that, is per section, or how do we want to best address that? Or thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, our code base is really large to where expecting one engineer to know most of it is going to be harder for some or most than others. So what I've done before in a prior project is divide by what the equivalent of a section. So within each section, there is a rotation. Because within a team, it's really hard to do a rotation because most of them are pretty small. So if you have 3 people on a team, that effectively makes them on call every third week. So it becomes a bit more brutal. But maybe at the section level, expecting developers to know to some extent how to debug through the component ownership of their stage and their peer group, maybe and expectation, and actually would benefit them to have that exposure. My hesitation is just doing it across the whole product because it's quite large. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that across the whole product, there are some areas which have really complex domain topics, like all the configure stuff, for example. I'm pretty sure none of the plane engineers would be able to jump right in there of how we are connecting to whatever there is. The question is, are we having such complex subtopics? So one of the Redis topics was around markdown rendering and how we are storing that. Yeah, even there, if we have someone from the manage engineers, they should be able to jump in and debug. At least they should have a closer connection who they can raise the topic up to that they find also other engineers in the area. But I think sections should be at least a good start. I'm not sure how your actions areas are with really overlapping areas, but I think someone from manage is also able to tackle something from plan or create at the moment in a quite good way.
So here's what I'm thinking based on your feedback. So I'm going to revise the plan that its rotation. The rotation is based on section, and the director and the managers are actually going to be the PagerDuty admins for their sections, and then they will the directors and the managers of each section will work out the rotation plan, the schedule individually. But overall, there will be one person to look after that. We have coverage over all the domains, and the rotation cycle. This will make the rotation cycle probably shorter. Like in initial plan I put together, any engineer will be on call at most twice per year for 2 weeks duration total. But now, down to the section level, it will be much more than that.
Well, Chun, do you want to try it at the product level? I mean, our developers are skilled enough to be able to at least first respond, get detail. It'll help us improve documentation. We can give that a go. And if we feel like we're always pinging a domain expert, then we can, move to the plan of, bringing that to a section. I do agree with you on the point. Because otherwise, the alternative too is the impact on product, because you're taking more engineers into that rotation.
Yes, so that's the trade-offs. There are some trade-offs we need to make.
Yeah, I see your point. Okay.
So let's experiment this. There are still a lot of logistics that I need to work out on the PagerDuty setup. So let's experiment this and for 1 month. And then we revisit this from the feedbacks of the engineers to see how it works and make adjustment from there.
Okay, go ahead and put that in the proposal then, because the one thing we do have to get is Eric to review this as well, and I haven't reviewed it in totality either. So from that perspective, a single rotation sounds fine to me to at least get started. The other thing I put in there, Chun, is that. Folks can shadow shadow potential operational issues, and that they need to work with their manager on basically figuring out the mapping. This is it. What I'm thinking right now, I haven't had a chance to talk to Stan, but I'm thinking is like somebody could shadow Stan as an example on some of the operational issues he's been dealing with, and he's pretty much continuously on that. So that's an opportunity for them they don't feel like they're up to speed. That's a way for them to kind of work around that. So that gives them at least an opportunity, right? From that perspective.
Yeah.
Are you thinking a 24-hour shift, or are you doing a 12-hour and follow the sun?
One pair engineer on one 24-hour. No, it's 12-hour shift basically.
12-hour shift.
Yeah.
So go ahead and also make the comment that if we go to sections, it probably means that we're going to 24/7 on call, which that's the trade-off we're making here. Because I think right now we're just not at the scale to follow the sun per section group. It would be my assessment, at least at a high level. From that perspective. Okay, cool. All right. Licensing costs. Is this the licensing of PagerDuty?
Yes, PagerDuty.
How much are we talking?
No idea, but it's not we probably can work around by using the chat ops the infrastructure team implemented, but I'm still figuring out if it's working out of the box or we need a further development of that chat ops. So I'm still working with Anthony on that.
Okay.
Yeah, if the chat ops bot works, we don't need a license for every engineer. We only need licenses for the developer, for the directors and the managers.
How is infrastructure dealing with this?
Their engineers are having license because they don't have this many people. But we are talking about like 100 people here.
Okay, give me a number though. My guess is we're going to be willing to spend the money.
Okay.
Like
I
can't promise that, but like let's go find out a number and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then did you get an answer on first response time?
Yeah. Well, you just typed up there.
Okay, cool. All right. Cool. All right. Cool. Then I'm going to move on to the next one. Next one was around the fact that Dahlia, thanks for pointing out in the retro that we we don't have a good responsive time on getting people access. And I've been starting to attend the IT Ops daily meeting, and what they've offered is that I asked for an SLO, and they offered, hey, why don't we just allow you all to basically create access for the folks who need it. So they're asking us basically for a list of names associated with this, and kind of two questions there in my mind is one, do we think this is a good idea in the short term? Are we willing to take on the load associated with it? And then, who are the people potentially that we put on the list from that perspective? So this is to get access to either dev or staging, essentially. So silence, I'm assuming it says, we think this is a good idea.
Yeah, I still have access to dev, so I can do it still there and adding that all the time because that is the more important. But yeah, I think it's a good idea if we have access and can do it.
Okay, who do you think we should put on the list? Should I just ask for all managers and all directors, or do we want a subset, or how do we want to think about this?
Yeah.
I feel all managers.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And to jump in if the manager is out or something like that.
Yeah, the managers will serve their team members. So.
Okay, so it's the manager's responsibility to serve team member, and then a director will have access in case the manager's out associated with it. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll start from that list then. See what they say. They may say that's too many people, but we'll start from there. And you say you have a link to a spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's in the issue.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. I'll look at that and try to help prioritize that from that perspective. Cool. Anything else on that topic? All right. Excellent. Chen, you're up next.
Yeah, next. Long story short, so I requested as interviews, but it appears that I made a false assumption. People were not trained about for that kind of interview. So what my takeaway is, I'm going to pause the request of IC interviews for now, and start training my engineers to be qualified interviewers, and train all the way through, and they're qualified to do all kinds of interviews. And this will be the scope will be only enablement team, and I will share the experience with everybody here. Circle back. So just a long story short, I made a false assumption that people are capable to do this kind of IC interviews. It's a combination of the domain-specific technical questions and also the behavior interviews. Looks like our engineers were not trained yet.
So,
cool,
so
yeah.
Chen, sorry, Tim, just to clarify, this is engineers being able to conduct technical interviews for potential engineering candidates? Is that the gap?
They were trained to do the formulated technical interview, but they were not trained to do behavior interviews, and
Gotcha.
also they were not trained to do some domain-specific technical questions, or they were not given clear instructions. So what I'm going to do is to write instruction what we can do for those domain-specific technical questions, and what they can do for the pretty much the behavior interview instruction. They're already there, and then combine them into an IC interview session. Say what are the expectations as an IC interview. Yeah, I made a false assumption. This was already done, but it appeared that I was wrong. I was totally wrong. So
no worries. I think that was perfectly sorted out from you. And Sean is also now quite happy about the situation. I think that the bigger topic that I have was simply around what we also discussed on Friday already in the backend hiring call, is really that we should find a way to get more ICs faster into interviewing. I've linked again to the data there, and I think the plan team had now 33 interviews over the last couple of months without hiring for anything. So that's quite a lot. And with my CI/CD package head, I tried to let the managers know to rather look first for people who actually have, or engineers who have previous interviewing experience, so that they are not more nervous than the candidate, and rather get to that fast, so that we can fill that in, because I think then it's much easier to do stuff inside your section if we have more people also interviewing that area. So highly appreciate it.
So the change.
What do you think the pool should be? How big do we think the pool should be? Because 10 feels awfully light relative. 10% of our organization feels awfully light, but I don't know if I'm not thinking about this correctly.
Hard to say, but there were people not listed in the pool, but definitely they were doing interviews, like Camille and Stan. So it's probably with purpose they're not called out there. And my plan, just circle back my plan. So I'm going to add more interviews to my teams. So we will reduce our request on the pool, and then eventually I will get enough interviewers that contribute to the pool. So that's my goal here.
And so I'm just wanting to make sure I understand, the issue that you're trying to solve is that when filling out the scorecards or something like that, there were gaps in areas that we could elaborate on. I'm just, I'm trying to find where the gap is. There's a problem you're trying to solve, and I think it's probably multi-staged, right? It's the fact that maybe they not familiar with the STAR concept, to do the behavioral stuff. But also the bigger thing is, it sounds like there's probably gaps in trying to fill out the scorecard.
Yeah, the gap I wanted to fill is the peers or IC's perspectives on the candidates, both the engineer and the manager candidates, because to me, that's important. The ICs should talk to their potential managers, make sure the manager will work well for the team, is a fit for the team. Same for the engineer candidates. So IC's perspectives cannot be substituted by the managers or leaders' opinions.
Okay, thank you.
So what do we think is the threshold of when somebody can start interviewing from an IC perspective?
Threshold of the interviewers?
Well, like 3 months under the belt, 4 months under the belt, 2 months under their belt. Like, what's the threshold that we should be considering them?
Team has 5.
Today in activity, I'm 3 to 5 months. I normally say that, so that they have a good understanding of their day-to-day job, and then get also proactive in those other areas. I mean, if you have someone who is almost already staff when they are joining, then and have some interview training yet, in such situations, perhaps we can also ask them to get into that area even more proactively. But 3 to 5 months is normally my learn your day-to-day job, and then I'm looking at other stuff and topics above it.
Okay, let's do this then. Todd, I know you're getting up to speed, but I'm gonna assign this one to you because it feels like this might be a good learning opportunity. So, so the first part is to just do an audit to say, okay, who's above 3 months, and then kind of say, okay, you know, in the engineering overall engineering, and say, okay, like who are candidates that we should be trying to make sure are being encouraged to be IC race, then we increase the pool size. That is kind of the overall goal associated with that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And you and I can work offline about details of how that mm-hmm. actually occurs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to also claim that this interview change, I want to limit it to my team or to my section only to start from, so that we will share the experience with all the directors and team, and they can decide later. They can decide whether they want to adopt this or it's just not necessary.
Yeah, I think we need to just go across the board though, and like audit ourselves and say, okay, like, you know, because I think what Tim's pointing out is that his team's heavily leveraged because that's where most of the experience is. But I think we actually have a gap in the last, say, 6 to 9 months where maybe we haven't been adding folks because we just said, oh, okay, well, we'll just keep it. Well, it just turns out that now we're hiring at a rate of 20 plus a month in this coming quarter. So if it turns into, it's going to turn into actually a worse situation from that perspective. So I'd like to rather get on top of it across the board. Because there may be folks in Secure, as an example, that we should be putting into the pool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're recognizing it for your team specifically for the growth aspects of it, but like there's also the aspect of other teams that are growing as well fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Does that work for you, Tim? Does it help to start to work to address your concern? Yeah, okay, all right. Chen, you got the next one?
Yeah, next one is basically just a quick feedback. That issue that you know, we were looking at the accomplishment or commitment rate. So I talked to my managers, and the feedback I got is that in the kickoff meetings, when the item is called out, sometimes it's meant that that item will kick off or will start in that release. And it's not planned to finish in that release. Sometimes the item is called out to be finished in that release. So it's not consistent messaging. So semantics is very different. So that's my team's case. So that's why it happened that we have some commitments carried over, not completed in the releases. So that's just a fact sharing.
Yeah, what I've been finding as I've been talking to different directors about this is that we're all over the map in this area. And it's one of the topics I want to talk to Eric and Scott about, just to see, you know, Scott's working on a new workflow proposal, and I'm trying to figure out like where this works into that from an expectations perspective. Because we have overall this concept of velocity over predictability, but if we're going to start measuring our what we say in kickoff versus what's delivered, then that's a commitment model, which is a little bit different from that perspective. So I just need to make sure we're all on the same page, kind of from that perspective. That's good to know, though, that now you're the third use case I've heard. Everything's checked at the beginning of the month, to a hybrid, to the PM just puts whatever they think is the aspirational things on the list. That's not very consistent, is it? Okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Cool. Yeah. So I got a request from Dara, which I think makes a lot of sense, and she was sent around a little bit by people ops and IT ops, etc. She wants to get a little bit more of training, especially less about technical topics in the first place, but rather domain knowledge on starting from serverless to Kubernetes and whatever there is. And she was looking into lynda.com/LinkedIn Learning. And so my question is, does anyone else already have any program in place where they use one program for a couple of people? Perhaps this makes a little bit more sense, because normally I've heard you get something cheaper if you buy more. So And so question was, we have something we have budget for that.
We lost you there for a second, Tim. I believe. Are you back?
So here I am.
If anyone has any, anyone has this. Does this Dahlia or Chen? Do you know of any at this point?
No, most of it is conferences or like local activities. So I have a few developers involved in meetups and like local gathering, but not formal training or courses online. I think it's a good idea. I don't know if we have any allocated specific budget for it.
And I have the same type of request going on as well, trying to get some Go training for the team, and so I know that I believe the handbook calls out individually how we get, individuals can get training, but not as a group. So that's something I'd be keenly interested in as well.
I think it's been done. The security team, I know Kathy was looking at bringing someone on to do security training for developers, which is, great. So we may want to, elevate that topic to the staff meeting and see if other directors have had, similar ways they brought it. Infrastructure, I believe, had one for Postgres. So there are a few prior examples we might be able to draw from.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks for exactly expressing what I was thinking about the group training. And I think it's a good suggestion. What Dahlia said is we can also bring it up in tomorrow's staff meeting.
Hey, Tim, if you can get a ballpark estimate, what I can do is I can talk with Brooks as well on it, just to see like what our flexibility is there from that perspective. Okay. He had it set up one around the hiring aspects, but then he wasn't ready to talk to me about it from that perspective. So I need to follow up with him this week anyways. So if we can get that like in the next day or so, that's probably something I can try to run down. Cool. Last thing I had on the agenda was just a reminder that we have proposals for fast boots due at the end of the month. If you have a team that's considering a fast boot or has put a proposal in previously, but wants to replenish it, the idea here is that we're going to give till the end of the month, and then by middle of August we'll have feedback on which one we're going to propose or get approved from that perspective. So just a reminder on that from their perspective. Cool. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.
All right.